Hey guys, welcome back. So this isn't your normal vlog. This is gonna be a book review. Finally, guys. I know I've been promising you guys this book for quite some time. And to be honest, like I was gonna read this a couple of weeks ago, not with, filming on. And I was just like, you know what, like I made a commitment to you guys that I was gonna do this video, and I'm honestly really excited to do it. I was just really like wanting to read this like super quickly and just like get it in my brain. But no, we're gonna take this, well, as quickly as we possibly can. I mean, filming. But for those of you who obviously, I feel like I can't even say for those of you who are new here, but if you're here, my name is Jessica. Jessica the Austinite is my Instagram. Feel free to follow me. I do a lot of random things on this account, mostly vlogging, but I also like to do book reviews because I am a book nerd. And so getting into the book. So this is China Rich Girlfriend. This is the second book in the trilogy by Kevin Kwan. The first book was Crazy Rich Asians, which I'm pretty sure if you're here, you've already read it. You've probably seen the movie like, I don't know, 50,000 times like me, because let's be real guys, it was the bomb. So I'm really excited to read this. So I'm gonna read the back for you real quick just to catch you up. Let's get up to speed, and then we're gonna dive into it because we got a lot to cover. How many pages are there? Okay, there are a lot of pages. Oops. 479 pages, you guys. So this is gonna be kind of a long read. It's gonna take me a few days. But, all right, let's get into the cover. Or the back, I should say, the summary. So, it's the eve of Rachel Chu's wedding, and she should be over the moon. She has a flawless oval-cut diamond, a wedding dress she loves, and a fiancé willing to thwart his meddling relatives and give up one of the biggest fortunes in Asia in order to marry her. Still, Rachel mourns the fact that her birth father, a man she never knew, won't be there to walk her down the aisle. Then a chance accident reveals his identity. Suddenly, Rachel is drawn into a dizzying world of Shanghai splendor, a world where people attend church in a penthouse, where exotic cars race down the boulevard, and where people aren't just crazy rich, they're China rich. Okay guys, first of all, let's go back to the first book, right, where we find out that Rachel's dad is still alive. And, we kind of heard about that, he's this good guy, and that, I don't want to go too much, just in case you haven't read the first book. I mean, it's kind of weird if you would watch this one. But, yeah, so, like, Rachel's dad, we found about him close to the very end of Crazy Rich Asians book, and that was like, what the hell, like, I was like kind of shooketh about that. And you know what? The movie, I'm kind of upset that the movie didn't portray what exactly happened in the book, I guess I could say, because if I'm remembering correctly, it's been a hot minute since I've watched the movie, but if I'm remembering correctly, they said that her dad was alive, but they didn't go into the whole thing that, well, I guess they did. Never mind. I'm thinking of something different, because I know I think there was a small clip where the mother, she talks about how her husband was abusive, and then she met this really nice man, and that's basically Rachel's dad, if I'm remembering correctly in the movie. I don't know. But anyways, okay, let's dive into it. So, because this is definitely going to be a long read. Okay guys, so I just finished the prologue, and it was quite long but very interesting. So just to dive into it, basically the first page, it's very small, but it's basically the London Chronicle. It's a news article piece, and it's talking about how a red Ferrari crashed in a Jimmy Choo store at, like, I guess sometime between 4 and 4:30 a.m. last night. no witnesses, and 2 people were sent to a hospital for serious but non-critical injuries, right? And like the vehicle owner's name was not released pending further investigation. And so I was just like, why is it kind of leading off with that? But it all makes sense. So the book kind of starts out with Eddie Cheng. If you remember, he is one of Nicholas's cousins, so he's a part of the family. And it starts with him, and he's at the airport, and he meets this lady. Her name is Mrs. Bao, and she's an older woman, and she is the mother of the guy who was driving the car. So her son was the one who was driving the Ferrari that crashed, and now he's in the hospital, and he's basically meeting her because he is a part of the private banking world, and him and a bunch of people basically just did, you know, public relation type stuff to try and make sure that this is out of the news media, that her son is the one who crashed the car, because his dad is a politician, and you know, at that point, his dad has been going around and, you know, talking to people, doing all the stuff that political people do, and so he can't really have a bad rep right now. And so the bank is, you know, going with the PR team, all that type of stuff. Sorry guys, I feel like my eye is like, it's just really dry. My contact is really dry. But yeah, so basically that family can't be bothered with too much publicity or press regarding this, and so the team was talking about, you know, basically how much money is this going to cost Mrs. Bao and the family to ultimately cover it up, right? And he meets with her because he's gonna go over the numbers, and then he's gonna take her to the hospital to see her son. So that's the first thing. And of course, you know, this is Eddie, and if for those of you who remember, Eddie is just like super high class, very materialistic. Like he shot, like it says in this book, like he spends most of his time buying like homemade suits and shoes and stuff like that than actually doing real world work. And so he's just very high class. And the funny thing about this was that so Mrs. Bao, even though she's like super rich, she flies economy, and of course Eddie doesn't. You know, he flies first class, especially in a first class cabin, and they're going to London because that's where well, he's from the Hong Kong bank, but they're going to London to do all of her, you know, money transaction stuff. So that was pretty interesting. I was just like, okay, I mean, why are we starting off with Eddie? Why are we starting off with Mrs. Bao? Like, you know, how is this related to Nicholas? And then you go to his mom, and it's just kind of weird. So her and her friends, so remember, her name's Eleanor Young. So her and her friends go to London basically for a girls trip. You know, she apparently hasn't been speaking to Nicholas for like the past 2 years, and she's with Lorena, Nadine, and Daisy. And Nadine, her father-in-law recently woke up from a coma and basically just like stopped all money flow and put them on budgets. And so this trip is just kind of like a girls trip just to get away from family and blah blah blah. But Eleanor has something that she needs to take care of at the bank, actually the same bank that Eddie works at, except her accounts are strictly with London. And they kind of go into it how basically, you know, to not put all of your eggs in one basket, which I mean, that's true in this day and age. I mean, it's always been true. Like, you know, just random financial tip in this, you know, don't always keep all of your money and assets in like one account. Like just constantly spread it out, because you never know what's going to happen in the future. And so that's what this is about. And so she's going to the bank just to see how much money she's going to need to take out for the day, and just to talk about her assets in general. It seems like she goes to London like once a year at least, and she does it discreetly, so no one in her family knows about these accounts. And she talks about it. It's just like one of those things that, you know, nobody needs to be in your business. And so she goes there and she runs into Eddie. And this is basically at the point where Eddie has just talked to Mrs. Bao, and he's going to take her out, I think, you know, just for a meal, to continue going over what's happening with her son. They just saw they just went to the hospital too. So like, of course she's kind of like a nervous wreck and stuff like that. And he sees Eleanor, so that's his aunt, and he's like, wow, so of course she would have like a bank account with us. And he calls her the B word. He's like, of course that B word would have an account with us, and like, you know, I'm gonna try and grill her accountant to see like what her account looks like. And Eleanor's like, oh my god, like, of course, like, this is the whole like reason why I wanted to have a bank in London of all places, because, you know, I'm not going to run into family. And yet here she is running into family, and she sees Mrs. Bao, but she doesn't really like think too much about it. It's just like, okay, that's probably like obviously one of his clients. And then the end of the prologue is they go to a Chinese restaurant that has apparently like these egg noodles that are like super good with lobster. And of course they're sitting there, and Eddie obviously takes his Mrs. Bao there. And Eddie's like, okay, I see Eleanor, I see her friends, like maybe this is a good PR move. Like if I can show my client sitting with these girls having like a good time, like maybe the press will like just look at it and be like, oh, she's just here like, you know, on vacation or whatever. And they'll kind of like drop it because someone kind of, I guess, did like a news leak and told a couple people from the Asian press about like what was going on with Mrs. Bao's son. So like there's rumors circulating. So he's hoping that with Eleanor being there and her friends, you know, who are like high social elite status, that if Mrs. Bao is with them, that, you know, they would just get the reporters off of the trail. So he goes to Eleanor and the group, and he pretends like this is the first time he's met Eleanor, right? Because he's trying to be discreet, and he's just like, hey, like this is Mrs. Bao, her son's been in a car accident. Would you ladies mind, like, you know, just basically comforting her while I go and handle the affairs? And then he asks Eleanor to come outside to like help him with the taxi, and she does. And he basically like right then and there is like, hey, like, I need your discretion. I need your friends to not say anything, knowing damn well that they're actually going to say something. So this is like, I guess like what, reverse psychology? I don't know like what you would say, but he's just like, okay, I know they're going to talk about it, but let me just say like, hey, don't talk about it, so they can talk about it, if that makes sense. And so he leaves, Eleanor comes back, and it's kind of crazy. I honestly, I wasn't expecting this. So I know that this book is going to be amazing. So Mrs. Bao is showing the photo of her son who's currently being hospitalized. And Eleanor's like, wow, okay, yeah, he's very handsome. And all the girls are like looking at each other, like, I guess like eyeballing each other, but not saying anything. Because the guy, his name's Carlton, by the way, Carlton Bao, is the spitting image of Rachel Chu. And Rachel Chu, of course, is our main character besides Nicholas. And I'm like, wait a minute. So you mean to tell me that this guy who is in this car accident, which by the way, guys, I didn't say it, there were 2 other females in the car with him. And one of the girls they talked about, the other one died on impact. So they're not talking about it. They're basically just gonna like hush that up. And that's what they said in like their PR meeting. But the other girl, she's in a coma, I believe. Yeah, she's in a coma. And, you know, he's just basically driving recklessly. Like, supposedly he's just that type of person who just has all of this money, I guess, and all this publicity and stress, you know, that this is what happened. So it looks like Carlton Bao is Rachel Chu's dad. I'm pretty sure. Yeah, because it says, there was no way it could be a coincidence. Bao Xiaoyan, I apologize if I said the last name wrong. Her injured son looked just like the woman who had caused the great estrangement between Eleanor and her son Nicholas. Yes, Carlton Bao is the spitting image of Rachel Chu. So, interesting. Because that means that she's from a high class family. Bloodlines, it looks like her bloodline is good. So Daisy apparently doesn't care about how people look, but she cares about bloodlines. And she asked Mrs. Bao if she was related to the Baos of Nanjing, and she was like, yeah, I'm actually my husband's Bao Galiange. Sorry again if I'm mispronouncing the last name. So if this is Rachel Chu's dad or someone who's related to her, they come from money. This is gonna be interesting. Interesting. But anyways, I'm gonna leave this part off here. It's late, you guys. I might read part 1 and I'll come back to you tomorrow, or maybe I'll read a couple of chapters. I don't know. It's kind of, well, it's kind of long. I don't know. What should I do, guys? Anyways, well, I'll figure it out. Either way, of course, I'm gonna report back to you about what I'm reading. But so far, I think we're gonna enjoy it, guys. I feel like there's gonna be a lot of plot twist, but we'll see. All right, hey guys, so it is the next day. I honestly did not get that far in chapter 1 before just calling it a night and going to sleep. So it is very late the next day. I don't even know what time is it, like it's almost 7 p.m. and I'm just now getting to this. Today honestly has been so long. It was a very long work day, but also we have a lot of boxes that we just kind of stacked in our main dining room, and they needed to be cut down, and they also needed to be organized because we're gonna have to take them to my friend's place. She has a big dumpster, and we're just gonna dump everything that we have in there, and then I had to organize it. And so that's literally been what I've been doing today. And so I'm kind of tired. Like I even have, I don't even know if you can see, I even have a blister. Well, it's probably not gonna focus. Oh well. I even have a blister on this hand, and then I feel like I got, I don't know, wood or a splinter stuck in this hand. So it's just been a day. But without further ado, let's just get into it. I'm really excited to continue. Oh, and I have my wine. This is the Stella Rose Black Reserve. Super sweet wine, very little alcohol content. It's just honestly like grape juice. So let's get into it. Alright guys, so I just finished chapter 1. I feel like this is gonna be such a long book, but I'm so like, I'm in it for the long haul. Like so far it's been really good, and I'm surprised like the prologue and chapter 1, like there's no Nicholas and the main girl. Why am I Rachel, duh. I was like, wait, why did I just blank on her name? But okay, just to like give a little background. So chapter 1 is kind of weird. It starts out with mainlanders basically, which I forget why they call them just like mainlanders. I guess because they're from obviously like China, like the mainland, and they're not from Singapore. But it's this couple, their name's Lester and Valerie, which I don't know why they're important. Maybe like later on we'll, I guess, figure out why. But they're talking to this girl named Karina. I think I'm saying her name right. And they're going over the fact that they want to bid at an auction for a painting, and it's called blah blah, wait. It's called The Palace of 18 Perfections, and it's artwork created by the Qing Dynasty artist Wang Zhang in 1693. And there are 24 scrolls each that were found. And so this is supposed to be like the talk of the century. Like this is almost like finding like another, like they were saying, almost like finding another Da Vinci painting. Like it's on that level for Asia. And so we get to the auction, and we're kind of going through Lester and Valerie's perspective. Then you go and find out that the Getty, I think I'm saying that right, the Getty Museum is also bidding on these scrolls. And Astrid, so Nicholas's cousin, is bidding, and Oliver is the one who's bidding on her behalf at the auction. And so you're like, okay, like they're just going back and forth. And I mean, it's in the millions, right? Like that's pretty serious. Like it's starting to climb up like astronomically. And the guy Lester, one of the mainland Chinese couple, he's like getting nervous because he's like, oh my god, like I don't want to pay more than 90 million, and it looks like it's going to that price. And he's like, you know what, like we're just gonna go and outbid it, but you know, we're not gonna go like crazy high, right? But I mean, come on guys, like $90 million, I can't even imagine like just partying with 90 million on some scrolls. And then comes to find out that Kitty, who is Bernard's now wife. So if you remember, Kitty was kind of like this Playboy-esque, horrible at acting person who's just like very wild. so she married Bernard, which we all know that Bernard is the son of basically just like multi-billionaire guy, and he inherited his dad's billions when his dad passed. And so now they're they're bidding, and it just keeps going up and up and up and up and up. And so finally it gets to the point where like Astrid's like, you know, just keep going, and she's at the grocery store, guys. Her and Cassian are at the grocery store trying to figure out what they're gonna eat, I believe for that night, because their cook is like off. And she's just like, oh, you know, like, let's just keep bidding. And it's like, keep bidding, girl. Like, no, it's not worth it. Like, it's really not. And by this point, at like 150 or 150, the Getty Museum backs out. And like 160 or 180, Arminta backs out, because she's also bidding. And then the mainland Chinese couple, they back out. So it's just between Astrid and Kitty. And you're like, what? Bro, it goes to, oh my gosh, it goes to $195 million. And so Astrid's like, you know what? Let's just like, you know, I could definitely go higher, but you know, let's just let Kitty have it. You know, like this will be hers. And so Kitty is now the owner. Well, Kitty and Bernard are now the owners of 24 Scrolls, which are like the talk of the century. And I just find this so weird. Like chapter 1, like Rachel's not in it, Nicholas is in it, Nicholas isn't in it. So I'm just like, wow, okay, when are we gonna see Rachel and Nicholas? It's probably gonna be this chapter, because obviously it says Cupertino, California, February 9th, 2013, Chinese New Year's Eve. So I'm pretty sure we're now gonna get into the main couple. But guys, money, like China rich girlfriend, bro, the money in this book, like it's just kind of crazy. Oh, so another funny thing, sorry, when Astrid was telling Oliver to keep on bidding, she was at the grocery store, right? She's at checkout. Bro, why is she bringing out coupons, like Super Saver coupons, to basically get her bill down? So she's over here wanting to spend $195 million, but then saving on her groceries. That's probably like 20 bucks. Like, does that make sense to y'all? It don't make sense to me. But anyway, let's keep going. All right, guys, day 3 of reading crazy China rich girlfriends. So I'm actually starting chapter 7. Where is that? Ooh, this is why you need bookmarks, people. I did not bookmark my place. I just knew the chapter. Okay, chapter 8, blah blah blah. Where is chapter? Okay, perfect. So I feel like chapter 3 through chapter 7, like small details, right? Like small bits of detail has been happening. Sorry, I'm gonna move y'all a little bit. Okay, small details I think have been happening in each chapter that sets up the plot for Rachel and Nicholas, and I honestly just feel like it's a bit much. I don't even know if that makes sense. Like some of them are quick reads. Like it didn't take me that long to get from chapter 3 to going on chapter 7, but it's just like I feel like a lot of it's unnecessary. Just a lot of unusual detail. I feel like it's irrelevant. But anyways, so chapter 3 is basically, it's Eleanor, and we're starting to realize that this book is going to be in many different perspectives. So we have Eleanor, we have Rachel, we have Nicholas. We kind of have like an overall what do you call it in books when it's like it's no one's, maybe just like the narrator's perspective. And so chapter 3 is called Scott's Road, and it's February 9th, 2013 in Singapore. And Eleanor has basically been befriending Mrs. Bao Xiaoyan. I think that's how I'm pronouncing her name. She's the person, as we just spoke about, whose son, Carlton, was in a terrible car accident. And so she's meeting them. It's Chinese New Year's, or Chinese New Year Eve, I think. I can't remember. I read this last night, but yeah, it's around Chinese New Year's. And so she's meeting Mrs. Bao. Now, of course, we all know, like, Eleanor always has some type of, like, hidden agenda. And of course, she's trying to be buddy-buddies with Mrs. Bao because she wants to know if Carlton is Rachel's dad. And so far, it's her and her, you know, group of friends. They're the only ones who kind of, like, are in the know that they think that this is Rachel's dad. Nobody else knows. Nicholas doesn't know. I mean, I don't even think his father, Philip, knows. Definitely not Astrid. Astrid doesn't know either. And so she's meeting Mrs. Bao basically just to exchange gifts, just to, you know, do the Chinese New Year's welcome and, you know, wishing each other well. And so she goes there, and of course, apparently this is their third or fourth apartment, or like basically place of staying while in Singapore. Like, once they were at this other place, and then they went to another place like 2 weeks later, and then like a month later they went to another place. And so like they're like hopping around, and supposedly like Eleanor is like kind of doing like calculations in her head, like, okay, like how rich are they? Like, clearly they have Eddie as their private bank connoisseur, and so like she knows they're loaded, but she doesn't know how loaded they are. And she's going through their like condo-esque apartment place, right? Because it's an apartment. And bro, they literally have a sky elevator, like a car elevator, where basically you park your car on the elevator and then it literally takes you to the floor or like the level that you own. And so she's like, wow, okay, so definitely they're in a prime real estate area, which obviously is like multi-millionaire area, and they have a carport, and it goes directly to their floor. And not only that, so when she arrives at their floor, Mrs. Bao and Carlton are waiting for her, and they're like, you know, waving at her, and Carlton's like, oh, I thought you would like it. And he has some, I guess like a remote or something, and it can change the windows, because when you look, like, you look directly into their apartment, so it's just like legit windows. And then he pressed a button, grayed it out, so like, you know, it's like a super high-tech apartment. Eleanor's like, okay, obviously this is Carlton's doing, because Mrs. Bao, you know, she had she had economy class tickets when we were talking in the first chapter. She doesn't really approve of, like, I think any type of modern technology, but anything for Carlton, because I think Carlton is her only son. And if he is Rachel's dad, he has to be in his 40s or 50s. So they're still living together. I guess he's like a, you know, like a bachelor type thing, because he did have those two women in the car in the first chapter, I think, is when we talked about that. So yeah, so basically they're just like chit-chatting, and Eleanor's like slowly figuring out, okay, like how much are they loaded? So she's like, okay, the place has to cost at least 15 million. Like, guys, that's 15 million. So clearly they make more than 15 million a year. And then, you know, they're just like kind of talking, and obviously they go through how many apartments they've gone through. And then, you know, they're talking about New Year's, and basically just like, asking her just like random questions. Like, Eleanor's just asking her like random questions, like, oh, where's your husband? Oh, he had to go back to Beijing for business, or like political business, because he's in politics, and just like a whole bunch of like random stuff. And then we find out that Carlton, the word is, well, it says, did Carlton tell you about his Mazzy coming to visit? Which I'm assuming Mazzy means girlfriend, because Carlton's like, Mom, she's not my girlfriend. And then she's like, oh, your friend is coming. So clearly he has a girlfriend or a friend, just a female person in his life that is coming over. So you learn that, and you're like, okay. And then basically, what else? Oh, okay. So another thing that they say that ticks Eleanor off about how loaded they are is that not only did they buy the floor, so Eleanor thought that they were renting the level that they were on, and it turns out that they're not renting, they're actually owning it. So they bought it outright. And apparently Carlton was like, oh, we liked it so much that we bought the top floor and the below floor. And his mom, Mrs. Bow, was just like looking at him, giving the eye, because it's like, why are you telling Eleanor, who, yes, she's been helpful, and yes, she's like our friend, but like, you don't tell our family's business, like, you know, kind of like that look. And Eleanor is like, okay, so that's obviously, well, if you're thinking that he has a carport for each level, it's like 15 million at least. I mean, they're pretty loaded. So I think honestly they're billionaires, like, you know, but I don't know like how much. And so then the crazy thing is that, so Eleanor gives Mrs. Bow a, you know, basically a gift bag, and she's like, oh, thanks, you know, whatever. And then Mrs. Bow is like, oh, here's your gift. So apparently Eleanor, you know, she gets to the bag and she pulls out an instantly recognizable orange and brown trimmed box from the shopping bag. And obviously it's a box containing an Hermes Birkin bag. And we all know Birkins are like freaking expensive. I think I mean, you might be able to find some like under 10 grand, but those are the pretty, I think, common ones. But not only is it a Hermes Birkin bag, it's the white Himalayan Nile crocodile Birkin bag, which those run hundreds of thousands of dollars. And I've looked at it. So I looked online just to see if it was real. Like, I do this all the time, especially in Crazy Rich Asians book. I'm just like looking up shit because I don't know any of the, you know, like top-notch clothing items or jewelry. Like, I'm just obviously not in that lifestyle category, so I don't bother looking. But I looked it up, guys. I've seen some Nile crocodile bags going for like $329,000. Like, that's some serious money. So I mean, it's not like 15 million compared to what they're paying for their apartment, but like this right here for a gift to a person that you've only known for a few months, that's extreme. And so you know that they're actually, I feel like they're billionaires. And even Eleanor is shocked. Like, she's like, oh my God, like, I can't take this as a gift. Like, let me buy it off of you. And then you come to find out that Mrs. Bao has a room literally with just Hermes Birkin bags. So, like, let's add that up, okay? She has to have, I mean, just in that one room alone, she has to have multi-million-dollar just assets in there, because I feel like I've heard it a lot where like Hermes Birkin bags are considered assets. Like, isn't there like a saying where like an Hermes Birkin bag is more valuable than owning gold? Like, have y'all heard that? Because I think I've heard that. And so Eleanor is saying that she is estimating that there's over 100 Birkin bags. So like, I don't even, gosh. Okay, so yeah, they are billionaires in my eyes. So that was chapter 3. So basically we just know that Mrs. Bao and Carlton are loaded. And if he is Rachel's dad, then I feel like Eleanor and the family, especially his grandmother, I think Su Yi, they're going to be like, okay, Rachel comes from money, so maybe, just maybe, we'll accept Nicholas marrying Rachel. Which, I mean, by the way, Nicholas can do whatever he wants, okay? Like, he can marry her, Rachel can do whatever she wants, like, they're two grown adults. But, you know, like, this, I think, I hate to say it, but like, in their eyes, you know, like, this, I think, would make it more acceptable that Rachel comes from money. Now, she might not be like the old money, but I mean, it's still money. She might be new money, but you know, clearly I think her the grandmother, at least, maybe not Carlton, the grandmother is at least loaded. Oop, coffee break. Okay, sorry about that, you guys. I had to get some coffee and rearrange a couple of things, but we're back. So chapter 4 was actually very short, and it was called Ridout Road, again Singapore, but and the date's February 9th. And it's over a couple of days, actually. It's like February 9th through February 10th. Okay, so a couple days. And it's an Astrid's perspective, and it's just an email chain to Charlie Wu, which if we all know, Charlie Wu is the person I believe that she went to college with, and they talk about him in the first book but briefly, and I think she has a thing with him, or like a fling, or maybe they're going to, I don't know, because you know she's married and Charlie I think is married, and he has children. And so Astrid is just basically saying, hey, I just want to wish you a happy new year, and just kind of saying that, you know, what she's been doing. So she was at her in-laws, they had dinner. She remembers that one time she came over to their house with a dish, and they had a dish, and one of the ingredients was a 24-karat gold leaf shaving. And she remembers telling her mom about it, and just going on, and she talks about how her husband Michael is basically buying like what is it saying? He bought 2 US-based tech startups. So basically he's like living the life, right? Like he's starting to get bougie rich as well. And so she's going over that. She's talking about how Cassian is in the terrible 5s and how they might hold him back a year. Just like a lot of random stuff. Oh, and also about how they bought a house on Ridout Road. So that's why chapter 4 is called Ridout Road. And then Charlie basically, like, this is a whole, like, literally the start of the chapter to the next page, that's her email. And then he literally has like a very small thing, and he's just like, yeah, great, culture seems great, oh, my children are great, just not really saying much. And so you're like, okay, that's kind of weird. Like, you know, she basically wrote like 5 stories worth of content, and he just like barely wrote a sentence. And so she writes back again, like literally, I think, oh, not immediately, it's 7, okay, so he did at 1:29, and she, at 1:29 a.m., and she responded at 7:35 a.m. And literally, I feel like I really don't know, basically, nothing in this chapter, like nothing of what they talked about, I feel like was important. I think what was important with this chapter is to show how Astrid is really going all in and talking to this guy, talking to Charlie, and then Charlie's just being one word responsive. And I feel like this is the start of her reliving memories, maybe reliving feelings that she had for this guy like years ago, like legit years ago. And so I think that's what this was about, because I don't know, it was kind of weird. And then chapter 5, so chapter 5 is Tired Sol Park, Singapore Chinese New Year morning. And okay, yeah, so it was Chinese New Year Eve the time before. Okay, all right, so this is basically in Astrid and Eleanor's perspective. And so, oh, and it starts with, what is this person's name? I'm so sorry, guys. People's name. Okay, basically, so it starts out with the family that's like the 3rd cousin removed or something like that to the Youngs, which is Eleanor. And they're talking about how they're the type of family during Chinese New Year, like there's a tradition of, you know, you visiting the elders first, and then you visiting the second, and your parents, and then your brothers, and whatever. Well, it goes on that, you know, technically they're out of order. Like they're typically the first people to arrive at Eleanor's and Suyi's, at Suyi's house, the grandmother's house first, even though like that's not tradition, but they just do it anyways. And so they're giving a little background on the story. And apparently the grandmother, her name's Lillian, her kids, so Geraldine and the wife, what is her name, Evie? Yeah, Evie. So Eric and Eve are telling their grandma, which is Lillian, like, hey, when we're here, like, don't mention anything to Eleanor about Nikki or a wedding happening in a cat. Like, don't mention nothing. Like, grandma, like, just keep your mouth shut. And the grandma's like, yeah, I promise I'll do that. And like, literally, guys, like 2 seconds in, as soon as she sees Eleanor, they're chit-chatting, and she's talking, and then the grandmother brings up going to California for something, and she's like, oh yeah, because you're going to California, right? And Eleanor's like, no. And she's like, oh, you're not? Eleanor's like, why would I be going to California? And the grandmother like realized like, oh, maybe it's time for me to shut up. And so she does, and just like, oh, sorry, like I got you confused with someone else who's going to California. And of course Eleanor's like, what could be happening in California? She's like going through her head, and like instantly she's like, Nikki must be getting married soon to Rachel. And so of course at that same time Astrid comes in with Cassian, And you know, they're like and being basically welcoming everyone and introducing and just this whole thing. And Eleanor immediately takes Astrid and is like, hey, is Nikki getting married anytime soon in California to Rachel? And Astrid's like, I'm not talking to you about this. Like, this is not my business. Don't put me in the middle of this. And Eleanor's like, no, you need to tell me. Like, you're already in the middle of this. Like, this is Nikki we're talking about. Like, I need to know. And of course, Astrid's like, no, I'm not going to tell you. And then Eleanor, like, blows up in her face. Was like, well, I need to know. Like, I'm his mother. And apparently everyone heard this, including Sugi. And it's just embarrassing. And so Eleanor, being Eleanor, decides to persuade Cassian, who's 5 years old, with ice cream into admitting that his mom Astrid is going to California in March. And this is Chinese New Year, so this is like, when is this? January? Sorry, this is February. So Eleanor's like, okay, I have time to basically plan either going to the wedding or telling Nicholas maybe about Carlton. Like, she's planning something, so she's like, oh, I have time. And then chapter 6 is Morton Street. And I feel like chapter 6 was, let me see, was it, okay, this was a pretty long, yeah, that's what I'm thinking. This was a pretty long chapter, and this was the last chapter. Yes. Okay, so chapter 6 is basically, it's February 10th. 2013, it's 6:38 p.m. and Astrid basically tips off Nick that, hey, your mom knows about California. I didn't tell her anything, but like, she knows that your wedding's coming up, so clearly there is a mole, aka her son, which I don't think she's gonna figure out that Cassian was the one who told. And then February 10th, the same day, but at 9:47 a.m. in Eastern time. So February 10th at 6:38 p.m. was in Pacific, now it's Eastern time. And Nikki and Rachel just got back to their NYC apartment. And basically Eleanor has left 3 messages just telling him like, hey, this is important, like, you need to call me back. And I think she's about to talk about Carlton. So I think she's trying to do the right thing, but she's not obviously going to say anything on the voicemails. And Rachel's the one who heard the voicemails first. And she's like shaken up about it because like, this is the first time that she's heard Eleanor's voice since I think being in Singapore. And she's just like kind of freaking out about it. And then she's like, hey, I think you need to listen to the voicemails. Like, it sounds pretty serious. So of course, Nikki's like, no, I don't care about anything. She's obviously playing tricks. She's playing her, like, her mind games. And like, I'm just not gonna buy into my mom's stuff. And Rachel at this point is kind of like, okay, maybe this is bad. Like, maybe you should listen to your mom, like whatever. But of course, Nikki's like, nah, I'm not gonna do it. And then this same chapter, it basically goes over to Nikki is teaching in his class, and 2 blonde looking, I think, females. Yes, blonde looking females interrupt his class and is like, hey, like, you need to come with us. And they're like in sailor suits, which is kind of weird, but they're like, hey, you need to come with us, blah, blah, blah. And so Nikki, like, you know, reluctantly goes. Like, he cancels his class, which has like 30 minutes or something left. And then he's following these people, and he thinks that it's Colin, his best friend, like planning a bachelor party. And he ends up going to like some marina area, a dock, and there's like a yacht. It's obviously gorgeous. And so he's like, oh my God, like, this is definitely a bachelor party. But then when he gets on the boat, he notices that nobody is there. And these 2 sailors, like, he starts panicking a little bit. He's like, okay, maybe this is actually, like, I shouldn't have just followed 2 random people on a yacht. But he ends up going, being directed into a room, and you find out that it is, what is her name? What is her name? Wow. Okay, sorry guys. So her name is Jacqueline, and basically she's just a family friend, and I believe she is close to Eleanor's age. I could be wrong, I can't remember, but I think she's one of Yes, one of Eleanor's friends, or she's old. She's definitely older, I think, than Nikki. But anyway, so she's visiting him and they're kind of chit-chatting, but overall the whole conversation was basically telling Nick that he shouldn't marry Rachel right now because his grandmother, his Ama Su Yi, is leaving him Tyersall Park, which is her home, her estate. And Nikki at first is like, I don't, like, no, she's not leaving it to me. Like, it's gonna obviously go to my dad, Philip, and then once Philip passes away, it's gonna go to me. So, like, I don't care. I'm gonna marry Rachel. Like, I don't care about the money. And Jacqueline's like, no, you don't understand. Apparently, when he was in boarding school or college, when he was off in college, something happened. And basically, Suyi took Philip out of her will and put Nick as her, I don't know what you call it, but basically the person who would benefit of getting the estate. And Nick's like, are you sure? And Jacqueline's like, dude, like, yeah, I was there when this was happening. Like, I'm probably one of the only people who knows about this. And so, like, if you decide to marry Rachel right now, like, at this moment, like, Tyersall Park's not going to you. Like, your Ama is willing to write you out of the will and give it to probably one of your family members. And she was like, do you want Eddie to get it? And we all know that Eddie, who was in the first part, like, he's a jackass. Like, he's a complete, like, just moron. He's very materialistic. We clearly know that he's probably gonna somehow burn it to the ground. Like, he's just that one family member who obviously cares about money, but he cares about it in all the wrong reasons. Like, he's not going to live up to the young name, if that makes sense. And so Nick is starting to actually, like, low-key, like, think, like, okay, maybe I shouldn't do this. You know, like, I don't know, you can kind of, not see, obviously, because it's a book, but, like, you can kind of feel like he's doubting it, right? Like, doubting the marriage. And he was like, well, I'm going to marry Rachel regardless. And then Jacqueline's like, look, she's like, I didn't say you didn't have to marry her. Just wait until basically your Ama dies and kicks it and keeps you in the will, and then you can do whatever you want once she's passed away, basically. Like, you can have Tyersall, not only can you have Tyersall Park, but you can have Rachel. So, like, it's a win-win, but just wait it out, right? Because she's in her 90s, like, she's probably gonna die anyways. Basically, that's what Jacqueline said. And Nick is like, right? And so I'm just kind of, you know, so that's where I left off, right? So I clearly am, well, I'm not that far, clearly. So this is chapter 7. I still have a lot to do. But you know what though, guys? At first I was mad at Nick for even giving me the slightest impression that he would just wait to marry Rachel until basically his grandmother kicked the curb. It's kind of sad, really. But at the same time, like, looking at it from today's perspective, right, with new glasses on, right, I think Jacqueline kind of has a point. But the thing is that he needs to me, like, if it were to work, he would need to be very transparent with Rachel. But then again, Rachel's also not the type of person who cares about money. She doesn't care about things. And, well, not things, but I don't think she would realize how many doors would close for Nick and her if his Amal writes him out of the will and just basically disowns him. Because right now, according to Jacqueline, his Amal is willing to take him back in, so to speak, and just forgive him. And I don't know if Rachel would be into that. I mean, low-key, it's kind of a strategic move, financially speaking. Oh my god, that sounds so bad. It's just like, wait a while, but then it shows that, you know, your financial stability, your assets are more important than marriage. And so you kind of have to, I don't know, between him and Rachel, they have to figure it out, right? And of course, obviously the book is going to go through it. And I seriously doubt that Nick is going to really go through with it, because, I mean, he can definitely lose Rachel. I mean, he already lost her once, right, technically. So, like, I don't think she's afraid to walk away from him if he decides to tell her, like, hey, why don't we not get married until my grandmother kicks it? I don't know, guys. More to come. Okay guys, so clearly my hair is up. I went to go grab some spaghetti for dinner. I was absolutely starting to get famished. And so anyways, I've just quickly read chapter 7. And okay, so I found out a couple of things that I wanted to talk to you guys about. Okay, so first things first, I realized that this book is actually in parts. So I believe there are 3 parts. So I am almost done with part 1. Part 1 ends on chapter 12, and then it restarts up again with chapters being like 1, 2, 3, 4, so forth, and etc. So anyways, I just finished chapter 7, and I think what I'm gonna do is actually split this video in 3 parts, just because I want to go into detail with the review of this book, and there's just like so much going on, you guys, and I really don't want this to be like super long for you. So that's kind of why I'm gonna break it into 3 parts. But okay, that's the first thing. Second thing, let's talk about chapter 7. I mean, chapter 7 I think is by far one of my favorite chapters. I don't really know why. I'm getting like, okay, I kind of do know why. I'm getting Princess Diaries vibe, like the first movie when her character went to Genova, and was it actually, no, it was the second movie, because that's when she moved to Genova. Oh my gosh, I'm so bad, I can't even remember. But anyways, and remember like she walked into the closet and there's like diamonds and like tiaras and just like all princess type shit. Okay, this is what this reminds me of, because, okay, so the chapter is called Belmont Road. It's in Singapore. It's March 1st, 2013. And Carol Tai, which is Bernard's mother, is with Eleanor. And they're going to Mrs. Singh's property. Who Miss Singh is apparently just like, you know, another billionaire. And she throws these parties where back in the day, like 1960... until now, apparently she throws these like yearly parties where she invites gals over to kind of admire the jewels that she has bought within that year, right? Which, that is some bougie crap right there. Can you imagine just like being invited to, sorry guys, I have a fake eyelash extensions, and one was coming down and I just took it out. Oh god, so gross. Anyways, she invites like lovely ladies to basically just admire and like wear her jewels for the night and just chit chat and gossip. Literally, it's a sleepover, but like times it by like 50 billion, and that's what you'll get is jewels galore, because apparently it's like hundreds of millions of dollars on these pieces. And so they of course get invited because they scored some tickets from Carol Tai's bank. And they're going, and at first you find out that Mrs. Singh's daughter-in-law like has taken over, and supposedly like each year her daughter-in-law like throws basically like a charity event, and it's not really the best. Like it's like no longer intimate. Like you're not over here like playing with the jewels. Instead, it's kind of like a miniature museum at Mrs. Singh's house, and you just kind of admire like a themed display. So apparently one year it was like jewelry for mourning purposes, so like everything was black and depressing, and it was just like a whole thing. And so the ladies are there, Eleanor, her clique, you know, we have Daisy, we have Lorena, and they're just basically they're talking shit about it basically, because they're like, this is boring, like why are we here? You know, maybe the food is gonna be better because this is like absolute garbage. And then finally Mrs. Singh comes over and she's like, oh ladies, so glad you're here, like follow me. So they follow her down like a back staircase, basically just like a hidden gem, and they go to her private seating headquarters basically. And she opens the door and it's like a pajama party but with jewels. And so Mrs. Singh is like, oh, my daughter doesn't know I'm like hosting my own event. And so meanwhile, while her daughter-in-law is having all of these people here for like a museum themed exhibit, basically, she's over here showcasing her jewelry like she normally does. And so they're over there and, you know, they're talking about all the different types of pieces, you know, that she has. I mean, apparently she has this long necklace of diamonds and pearls that her grandfather had made, and apparently he was over 300 pounds, and so he needed something to go over his belly. And so, like, you know, just like lavish crap like that. And then Miss Carol, she starts, you know, like, oh, I should have just stayed home, like I'm not really having as much fun as I should have. Sorry guys, like I feel like there's something in my eye. Oh, it's always this eye. Anyways, you know, she's like, you know, Bernard hasn't spoken to me and he's not returning my calls, and like every time I open the paper, Kitty's always buying something extravagant. Like, did y'all hear that she bought that $200 million painting, which she's talking about the scrolls that we just went over at that auction, and everyone's like, yeah, I mean, don't worry about their spending, like, you know, they're just, it's basically like a phase, and like, don't worry, like Bernard's gonna get over it, and you know, don't worry about Kitty, like just learn to ignore what your kids are spending. And then Carol's like, no, you don't understand, like he doesn't have money to spend like that. And they're like, the girls are like, you know, their interest is peaked, and they're like, okay, you know, why not, like doesn't he own all the businesses since his dad died? And the wife was like, no, ever since Dotto died, he left everything to me in his will because he knows that Bernard would literally like put me under a freaking bridge and sell everything that I have, or just like destroy the business, and like this whole thing. And they also apparently locked up his trust fund, and so the only thing he gets is just like the annual, I think, interest on what is safely locked up. And so I don't know like when he expects to get it. I guess when his mother dies is when his trust fund will open, and like, you know, obviously the businesses and stuff I think will be tied to him. I'm assuming. And apparently Carol's like, he doesn't have that much money. He's only allowed a $10 million allowance, which is like, guys, a $10 million allowance, and he's in his 30s. I'm assuming Bernard is in his 30s because I think Rachel and Nick are in their 30s. Like, what the hell, guys? Can you imagine what you could do with $10 million a year instead of just spending it mindlessly? I mean, of course, like, you know, do a few things here and there, right? But like invest it, like invest in yourself, invest in your family, like, you know, generational wealth type of thing. And she was like, he only gets 10 million. And they're like, what? Then how is he affording a $200 million scroll painting? And Carol's like, I don't know, like he clearly has like probably overdrafting with the bank. And Eleanor was like, actually the banks are probably letting him overdraft that much because they know that once, you know, he starts getting his trust fund and all the businesses, they know that he'll be worth buku billions. And so they're totally okay with him spending now because they're gonna get paid back at a later date. And Carol's just like, oh my god, like I cannot imagine my son basically owing a bank of money. Like, it should never be like that. So kind of crazy. So that was basically chapter 7, and I think that was my favorite chapter just because of like the jewelry aspect, and like that it's a hidden party. Like, Miss Singh has some balls doing that without her daughter-in-law's knowledge. And then we get to know a little bit about Bernard. And oh, another thing, so Bernard and Kitty have been married for 3 years, and they have a 3-year-old. And Carol was like, oh, she's already like leaving that baby, like she's not basically a mother. Because apparently like every week she's somewhere new. She's hardly with Bernard. She's always buying something. She's always wearing something. So guys, more to come. But now I'm about to be on chapter 8, and it's called Diamond Ballroom, Ritz-Carlton Hotel. It's in Hong Kong. It's March 7th, 2013. Woo! Okay guys, so I just finished reading chapters 8 and 9, so I only have a few more chapters left that I'm going to cover in this video. Okay, so let's just get into chapter 8. So chapter 8, it starts off with the Pinnacle Magazine's Social Swells column by Leonardo Lai. And basically he's going over what people wore at the 15th annual Ming Foundation Pinnacle Ball that was held at the Ritz-Carlton Hotel. Now, the theme for this ball was Nicholas and Alexandra, who's the imperial couple from Russia. And so everyone is at this event, and they're wearing that themed dress, I guess is what you could say. It's basically what you would think that Nicholas and Alexandra would wear. And so, he's just going through it. And then there's one part where there's a guy, his name's Sir Francis Poon. He was awarded the Philanthropic Pinnacle Award. And right as he was getting the award, he was doing his speech, Kitty Pong, who is now Mrs. Bernard Tai, rushed on stage, pulled a Kanye with Taylor Swift, and basically was like, hey, like, this is my moment to shine. However, I'm gonna do you good. I'm giving you $20 million for your foundation. And so you would think like, oh, that was all great, right? Well, so the next part of the chapter is with Astrid and Charlie Wu, and basically he pings her, or IMs her, I guess, on her laptop, and she's at the airport waiting to go to LA because she's going to Rachel and Nick's wedding. And he's just basically talking to her about, basically he was so lovely that he got to see her. I think it's been a couple of years since they've seen each other. And he ran into her at this ball, and he was just basically like, chit-chatting with her the whole time. And they're just going over, the kitty thing and like what they wore. And he's like, kind of making cute remarks to her, like telling her that she was like the best dressed and blah, blah, blah. And at the end of it, he logs off on his computer, and he's just basically saying that, like, seeing her in person, he realized how beautiful she is, and like, I guess feelings are starting to stir up for him. And so he's like, you know what, I'm going to tell what's his name, I guess it's like someone he works with, Johnny something. Basically he asked him, hey, like, I need a plane to LA right now. And so in his head, he's like, oh, I'm going to go there. I'm going to surprise her with like 500 roses. And then we're going to go to lunch. And we're going to spend this, basically like date stuff. And then he's like, wait, I'm married. She's married. Like, I can't be thinking like this. Like, oh my God. And then he was like, I could have had my chance. Because remember, Astrid and Michael in the last book were going through some stuff. And of course, Charlie was in there. And apparently, while Michael and Astrid weren't doing so well, Charlie came in and basically saved him. And so Charlie's kind of the reason why Michael's now becoming like this high-tech, close to billionaire person. And he's like, like, I should never have done that. What was I thinking? And he's like, now, like, they're beautiful, they're happy, they're perfectly in love. He's like, and now I'm here with the wife who hates me. Miserable as fuck. And so that was the end of chapter 8. So kind of interesting. But chapter 9, so it's called The Lot Club, Hong Kong, March 9th, 2013. And it's all about Kitty Pong. And so now we're trying to figure out, okay, Kitty Pong, like, what's happening with her? Why are we hearing about her buying that, the scroll paintings? She just dropped 20 mil. We just heard from Carol, Bernard's mom, that they don't even have none of that money to begin with. So, like, what is happening? And so chapter 9 is basically, you have Kitty, and she was invited to the Lot Club, which is a very private and exclusive membership dining club, only for like the most elite type of people. And she was invited by this lady. What is her name? Why can I not remember these people's names? Well, Mrs. De Ayala, who she is, her and her husband just moved to Hong Kong, and so they just literally got on the membership. But Mrs. De Ayala invited Kitty to have lunch with her. So they're into the dining place, blah, 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 and there are apparently some ladies in the elevator who I guess were with Kitty. They kind of saw her, so like Kitty was, she went up the elevator and she was sitting down, and then this lady, her name Rosie Ho, went up to the elevator. She obviously saw Kitty, and she was having lunch with a few people, including Mr. Poon's wife. Her name's Ada. And she's kind of like, Rosie's like, look girls, you'll never guess who is sitting right now in like the parlor waiting to be dined here. And everyone's like trying to guess, and obviously no one's guessing Kitty. And then Rosie's like, bro, it's Kitty. And so Ada got like really upset, and she's like, no, this cannot happen at my lunch. Excuse me one moment. And so Ada clearly is going to talk to someone, and you're thinking that she's just gonna tell the waiter or the waitstaff, whoever, the host, like, hey, I don't want them lunching with us, just say that there's a table mix up or something. And so as soon as Mrs. De Ayala and Kitty are about to be seated, the manager comes and is like, oh, I'm so sorry, like we double booked. I made you a reservation at this other place, blah, blah, blah. And so they're kind of confused. Like, she's like, hey, I called 2 days ago and like I didn't get a call back from this. And the manager's like, no, like we're sorry. This was just like a mix up on us. So they go downstairs, and then as soon as they do, her husband calls her, and he is like cussing her out with like a frantic storm. And Mrs. De Ayala was like, what are you talking about? Like, we literally didn't even get to sit down. And she gets off the phone and she tells Kitty like, hey, can we do a rain check? Like, I just don't feel well. And Kitty's like, well, what's wrong? Like, you know, what's happening? And she's like, I don't know, but we just literally like got kicked out of the club. And that's a huge thing. And Kitty's like, oh, I feel so bad. And like 2 seconds later, this lady comes up to Kitty and was like, hey, like, you know, how are you? Like, I kind of saw the whole thing. And Kitty's like, oh, I feel so bad for my friend. Like, she just got kicked out of the club for like no reason. And the lady was like, hey, I'm Corinna. And if you remember from the beginning, Corinna is the lady who helped Lester, and I can't think of the guy's name, or the girl's name, Lester and something, helped try and get the painting that that Kitty bought. And she's like, hey, no, like the real reason was because Ada is a member, well, I guess she's a part of the team that handles memberships for this exclusive dining club. And basically she's like, Ada took her off the list because she invited you. And Kitty's like, why would she be upset with me? I mean, I didn't do anything. Like, I literally gave $20 million to her husband's foundation. And she's like, that's the point. She was like, you literally ran up stage to be noticed by everyone, to have publicity of you giving $20 million when like literally this guy, her husband, has been doing philanthropic work his entire life, and this is like the only time that he gets this award, and he's like 86 or 87 years old. Like, you were so rude. And so his friends, his family, and his wife especially, Ada, is like pissed off at you because you were so rude, and it's embarrassing, and just like you're such like you're not a Hong Konger, like you clearly are so naive. And Kitty's like, what? Like, I mean, she's like, I'm doing everything right. Like, I've done so much in the last 2 years to get my name. Like, I'm a philanthropic person. I've donated. I got the scrolls. Like, basically just saying like, I'm making myself hot shit. And Corinna's like, okay, but like, sure, you'll be up here and you'll get to go to like some parties, and of course you'll be invited to things, and you might even get like a board position with something, but like, she's like, you're never gonna be like the Hong Kongers main level. Like, you're never gonna be invited to these exclusive private dinings. You're never gonna go to those parties. You're never going to be, you know, kind of having all these open doors. And she was like, especially her children, like, think of basically all the Adas who in the world who hate you because of who you are and what you're trying to be, that will literally close doors on you and your kids. So like, your kids won't even get to go to the same schools, and basically you just kind of handicapped yourself from the beginning because of who you are. Like, you were a porn star, and you were with Alistair Young, and then you went to Bernard, and like, that family sucks. So like, she was like, honestly, like, this was from Corinna. Sorry guys, my camera ran out of memory. So anyways, let's get back into it. So yeah, Corinna was basically just giving her this whole spiel about how she's never going to be the person who hangs out with these like super elite people, the people who make the world go round, the people who change culture and stuff like that. unless she partners with Corinna by paying her, of course, of just basically rebranding her, changing her life. So, and Corinna like showed her the pricing. Now she doesn't talk about the pricing in the book, but Kitty's reaction is like priceless. Like she looked at it and she was like, what the fuck? Like she was blown away. So I mean, this has to be super expensive. And Corinna was like, you pay me, I guess like annually. And she's like, the contract has to hold for a minimum of 2 years. And then from there, I guess they can maybe like redo or whatever. But yeah, so that was the end of this chapter. And I'm super interested in Kitty's backstory and how they're going to change it. I mean, how do you go from porn star to like Mrs. Eleanor Young? You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't know how it's possible. But if Corinna can do it, then I'm interested. I'm actually more interested in Kitty than probably Nick and Rachel's story. Which, by the way, we still haven't even gotten to Rachel and Nick. Like, I don't know. I mean, don't get me wrong. I've enjoyed all the, like, the other characters' perceptions of what's going on and stuff like that. But, like, really and truly, there's only been one chapter with Rachel and Nick, really. And it's not even, it's nothing. But I think chapter 10, it does say Montecito, California, March 9th. So I'm assuming this is Rachel and Nick. Maybe part 2 will go into Rachel's perspective. I don't know. We'll have to see. Let's get Alright guys, so I just finished part 1, so this means that we're starting to wrap this vlog. Okay, so crazy. So chapter 10, Arcadia. It's in Montecito, California, March 9th, 2013, which is the wedding rehearsal for Rachel and Nick. And it starts out with Rachel basically showing Pete Glenn and her friend Sylvia her wedding dress and how beautiful it is and all this stuff, and it's great. And they're going to the wedding rehearsal. And, you know, they're basically trying to just map everything how the actual day will be. And then out of nowhere, a helicopter comes raining down, and it's Eleanor Young crashing the wedding rehearsal for Nick and Rachel. Y'all, that's a ballsy move, for real. Like, can you imagine if like your soon-to-be mother-in-law, who you like have not seen in 2 years, just comes crashing in on your wedding anniversary, or wedding rehearsal, not anniversary. It's freaking crazy. And so she comes down and she's just basically saying, I want you to marry Rachel, please forgive me type of stuff. And then she just like drops the bomb of like, I know who Rachel's dad is. He's in California. He wants to meet her. Let's just hop on the plane and go see him. And of course, Rachel hears this and she's like, yeah, like, let's go meet him. And so that brings us to chapter 11, which is called 4 Seasons Biltmore. So this is in Santa Barbara, California. And basically, it's Eleanor, it's Nick, it's her, it's Rachel, it's her mom Carrie, and they all to the Four Seasons, and they get led into a inside of a room. And of course, what do you know, Carrie sees Gallion, I think that's how you say his name. And basically they just instantly recognize each other, and it's like, it's a happy moment. And Carrie's like, Rachel, this is your actual father. And so she gets to meet him. And then while that's going on, Eleanor pulls Nick aside and is like, hey, let's give them space, but like, Lowkey, I need to talk to you. And so she's telling Nick like, hey, like, please forgive me. You know, I think Rachel will forgive me, but like, I have some news. Like, I do want Rachel and you to marry because of her family. And Nick's like, why? Because you just found out that her dad is a politician. And she was like, he's not just a politician. Like, his father founded Millennium Pharmaceuticals, one of the largest medical companies in China. She said the stock is a blue chip on the Shanghai Stock Exchange. And so Nick doesn't understand it. He's like, okay, like, so what? He's rich. Like, all of you, all the people you know or hang out with is rich. And she's like, no, like, he's China rich. Like, he has billions upon billions upon billions of dollars tied to that family name. And so if you marry Rachel, you're going to be a multi-billionaire heir. And of course Nick is like, oh my god, like really, like, are you that shallow? Like, I'm marrying the love of my life. Like, I'm not marrying her because her supposed real father is a multi-billionaire. And Eleanor's like, look, you don't understand. Like, Ama might not give you your inheritance for even considering marrying Rachel. So, like, at least with Rachel's side, you will be way more than set, right? And so Nick was like, okay, like, you have a point. Like, I understand you coming from my mother, someone who lives in the generation of, like, basically all you care about is generational wealth until you die. And you have to make sure your kids have anything and everything. And then she tries telling him some more information. Like, apparently there's some more juicy gossip about the family that she really needs to tell Nick. And Nick is just like, look, stop right there. I don't care about anything else you hear. Like, this is awesome that you brought her dad to her, but, like, I don't want to hear any gossip. And so Eleanor is like, okay, like, clearly I can't say anything right now. I'm just going to wait until I have another opportunity. So that ends chapter 11. And then chapter 12, the last of this part, it's called Arcadia, Montecito, California. And so basically this is when Nick and Rachel get married. And honestly, guys, like, I'm kind of upset that they really didn't go into too many details with the wedding. I mean, you had, like, a couple of things mentioned, but, like, I just feel like this chapter was just glossed over. Like, the first book, I mean, you know, you want them to get married, you want them to be together forever. And, like, I was wanting a wedding even more detailed. It doesn't have to be, like, more extravagant than Araminta's, but I wanted it to be super detailed just like hers, and we didn't get that here. So basically it kind of just glosses over her and Nick getting married, and it's, of course it's beautiful and all this stuff. And then the end of it, Eleanor and Philip are watching their son, you know, waltz away with Rachel to their first dance song. And Eleanor's like, you know, basically not happy. Well, not, she doesn't look happy, but, and Philip was like, why aren't you happy? Like, clearly, you know, you made your son, like, the happiest person for doing such a good deed. And she's like, well, I don't know if I did a good deed. He's like, what are you talking about? And she was like, I got a late report last night on that family, and I'm not too sure I want to be meddling around them. Like, we shouldn't have gotten to bed with them. And then the dad was like, well, it's a little too late, darling. We're related to them now. And Eleanor gave her husband a look of abject horror. It was the first time this had occurred to her. So that's how we're gonna end part 1. I don't know, what do you guys think about this? I mean, I really do like how each chapter is very different, and you're going into the perspectives of, like, Kitty, Eleanor, barely Rachel and Nick. You know, when it's Rachel and Nick, it's not even Rachel's perspective or Nick's perspective. It's just, like, the narrator's perspective of what's happening. So far I'm enjoying it. I do like Kitty's story. I'm really curious at of what Eleanor has found or heard about. For some reason I feel like they're in some shady business deal gone wrong situation. I don't know, because they're multi-billionaires. I mean, we don't know how multi-billionaires act, right, in this world. So crazy, crazy, crazy. Now we're gonna be on part 2. I think there's 3 parts in here, I'm pretty sure, but I'm gonna end this off right now. I don't even know what to think. I just really hope that Nick and Rachel can outlast whatever's going to happen. I just feel like everything's so unstable. I don't know, maybe because we haven't been in her perspective or Nick's perspective pretty much in this entire book, but I just feel like something bad is going to happen. But they're already married, so she is Mrs. Rachel Young. So exciting. But anyways, guys, I'm gonna finish this vlog right here. If you like this type of video, please like it. Don't forget to subscribe. as always, you can follow me on my Instagram at Jessica the Austinite. I pretty much post there, and that's pretty much where you'll find me, if not on YouTube. What else? Oh yeah, feel free to leave me a comment. If you've made it this far, please tell me what your favorite